Generating traffic and sales can be a challenge for online merchants. But selling on the Walmart Marketplace puts your products in front of millions of customers who shop on Walmart.com. And right now, sellers who join Walmart Marketplace can save up to 50% on referral and fulfillment fees for the first 90 days. So get started today. Head over to marketplace.walmart.com/savings. That's marketplace.walmart.com/savings.
Welcome to E-Commerce Conversations, a podcast by Practical E-Commerce.
What is going on, Internet? Eric Van Holtz back again with another E-Commerce Conversations. I hope all is going well on the other side of the Internet. I am actually in Fort Worth,
Yeehaw,
Texas. So across, not across the desk from me, across from the coffee table from me, is none other than Mr. Patrick of Supply. Welcome.
hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Or thank you for coming to Fort Worth.
Yeah. It's a pleasure to be a guest. It's a birthday special.
Indeed.
Congratulations on turning another year older.
I'm 36 today.
It's a good day to celebrate.
It is a good day.
We posted some photos up on Twitter. So if you follow us on Twitter, you guys know Patrick's got Supply, which sells shaving, beard brand, of course. We sell beard stuff. So as Marshall put it, we're frenemies.
And one of my favorite frenemies, probably my only frenemy, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I think you said there's another razor company that you kind of stay in touch with.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a bunch of buddies in the shaving industry, like Adam, who does Leaf Shave. He's a friend. And, well, I wouldn't say I'm buddies with a lot of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's, I was thinking about this, and I think we talked about it a fair amount this weekend, is just like this. I think there's a lot of mentalities with entrepreneurs that you can't communicate with your competitors or people within your space. And I think that mentality is just like a really fixed pie kind of mentality.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. And there are certainly some people in my space that I have negative feelings towards, would be the nice way to say it. So it kind of just depends on how those competitors carry themselves and how they maybe present themselves in the marketplace versus you. So I have competitors that speak ill of me, either like in reference or directly. And so those guys, like, I'm not friendly with. But,
right.
People that, I don't speak ill of Leaf Shave ever. I think Adam makes great products, and so I respect him, and we're friends. But I don't certainly get along with everybody in the industry.
My big thing is like respecting competitors when they choose to do things their own way and kind of like build their own brand, tell their own story, have a different product.
Yep.
The ones I tend to get more annoyed with, I guess, is just like when they just copy
the ripoffs.
The ripoffs.
Yep.
And I think that's pretty common throughout. Like, and the funny thing is, like, everybody's getting ripped off. And there's a fine line too, because like ultimately, like, how many ways can you sell beard oil or,
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I certainly have almost exact replicas of my product, which is a very unique product. It's not like somebody else would kind of come up with it. And they definitely copied it. It's funny. I've seen on Twitter, like, CrossNet, Chris Mead and those guys, they were ripped off by Target. I think the other day, like, Muddy Bites is another guy on Twitter, he was getting ripped off. And, it ripped off. I think as a creator of a product, you like to call it somebody else is ripping you off. But at the same time, it's a free market. There's patents and trademarks and copyrights for a reason. And if you can't protect your product, then, sorry. That's what happens.
We had this conversation because this kid plays a lot with Magnetiles. And I noticed in his collection, he had both Magnetiles and Picasso tiles.
Yep.
And as someone who's never purchased these before, I'm like, which is the OG, which is the knockoff?
Yeah.
And like hearing, you guys talk about it, you're like, they're the same, they're interchangeable.
Yeah.
But I'm sure like the founders of each of those companies have two different like takes on the whole thing.
Well, and we've purchased ripoffs. So like you are, Picasso tiles were the ripoffs of the Magnetiles. I don't know, but I think the patent ran out on Magnetiles. And so
it's like Lego and whatever that generic block is. Too.
Yeah.
So it gets hard. Like, how do you continue to differentiate?
Yeah.
I think like, in my opinion, like Lego blocks are better than the knockoff blocks.
Oh, yeah, way better.
I'm a big fan of competition because it forces you to be better.
Yeah. You and I were talking about Nike the other day, how like they're always coming out with a new shoe somehow. Yeah. They're always somehow innovating and staying ahead of competition. And so like, I could sit around and complain about how other people are knocking me off, or I can come out with new products. So I, launched 2 brand new innovative products last year that nobody else has launched. And so, the guy that knocked off my product that I came out with 4 years ago, good luck, buddy. Have fun with that.
You talked about it like patents and trademarks. What's your take on that? Are you getting patents and trademarks and defending it? Are you doing takedowns? Because that seems like a distraction more than anything.
That's an interesting conversation because, there's one thing to have a patent and there's one thing to litigate and protect your patents. And so I've never had patents before on any of my previous products. I am getting patents on these new products I just released because I believe they're unique enough, and I think people are going to try to copy them because they're that good. And so I'm going to protect them because I know I can. But then the question is how are you going to protect when people, are you going to litigate against them? I don't have the cash to, sue somebody for ripping me off. So I don't know. I mean, I think you do have to get the patents in place if you have something unique worth protecting, and then, you'll figure out the rest later, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I almost feel like it's a double-edged sword because by having the patent, you're just well, now that I have it and someone's ripping me off, I have to protect it or I lose my patent. Or at least that's how it works with trademarks. Again, I'm not an IP lawyer.
Yeah, you don't lose your patent if somebody rips it off. I think you allow them to infringe on it, unless you litigate against them.
Yeah, so I feel like it's just, how much of a deterrent is it then? Do you think these copycat guys are oh, this guy's got a patent or this guy doesn't have a patent? They just see your Amazon sales and...
I think it's funny. Somebody, we used to, I don't know why this came to mind. We used to have, in my old job when I worked in a corporate world and I had a cubicle, we had these little locks on our doors, on our cubicle, where you could store stuff, but they were crappy locks and they couldn't keep anybody else. And one of my cube mates said, yeah, it only keeps the honest people out. It's patents, only keep the honest, it keeps the people out that don't want to litigate, don't want to get into that with you. But if you've got somebody that blatantly wants to
take advantage of your hard work. And
exactly. And I know it's funny. We were talking about Leaf Shave, he's got somebody, I think in Germany or something, that didn't rip off his design, but did something very similar and tried to sell in the U.S. And I noticed the other day he's not selling in the U.S. anymore. So good on Adam if he had anything to do with that.
Yeah. So, we've had this issue a fair amount, copycats. And, when you start selling globally too, then it becomes a whole nother can of worms because it's very common for, people in smaller markets to take ideas from American companies and then just reapply it to their market. And it can become this just huge brain energy, time suck, cash energy, cash flow too. And I don't know, I kind of this is where I lean into my Buddhist vibe where it's just yes, it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So the way that I defeat it is doing what you're doing is how do I innovate to where they're never going to be at our level. And you can always try to knock us off. And not only is that good for you and your company and being innovative, it's good for the customer as well.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel the mentality of hey, I created this is the greatest idea ever. I'm going to milk it for as long as possible and suck as much out of the consumer as I can.
Yeah.
And prevent competition. It's just not the way I think, and I feel it's just not really value add kind of mentality.
Yeah.
But that's also as a guy who comes up with ideas like dime a dozen,
It's execution that matters.
Right.
It's a, trite little saying, but it's everything, the guys that have ripped me off in the past, I don't worry anymore because I've seen so many of them fail because they don't get the key parts of execution. One guy, this was early, 5 years ago, some guy ripped off my design and the razor wouldn't even shave. It's okay, yeah, you can make a razor that looks like mine, but you forgot the part where it actually needs to shave hair. So it's you and I have been doing what we do for so long that I am very secure in my knowledge of what I do that some loser coming along trying to recreate it isn't going to be able to easily. I'm not saying nobody can do what I do, but I've been doing it long enough to where I've made all the mistakes and you've made all the mistakes,
We've got plenty more to make.
That's true. But I made enough to where, I'm the next guy coming along is going to have to make all those too, probably.
Yeah. One of the guests I had on the show, Sean Frank of Ridge Wallet.
Yeah.
I love talking with him because he literally will pull up his Excel spreadsheet and just show it to me. His real numbers.
He's done
and
the
everything.
Same thing with me too.
Yeah, the real numbers and just walk me through everything he's doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, don't you worry about, like, you're the most transparent person I've ever met.
Yeah.
And aren't you worried? And he's like, nah,
Yeah.
like, we're just going to crush you
We're
guys.
so much better than,
We're so much better. We've done so much more. Like, you're just not going to be able to do what we do.
And talk about knockoffs. I mean, I know he's got plenty of his own. So,
but for those who aren't familiar, who haven't listened to that podcast episode, I mean, they're doing 50 million plus in just a number of short years. You know, so he's clearly.
I think they're quite a bit higher than that now. I'll never forget, actually, this is a little bit of a geeky kind of shaving thing, but so Gillette, for the longest time, they stopped making, so I make single blade safety razors. And Gillette, that's obviously how they started 100 years ago. They now make, 12 monstrous blade razors, but they decided about 2 years ago they were going to kind of get on with the nostalgia and bring back their like iconic single blade razor.
Right. Like the King Gillette?
Yeah, it's called the King C Gillette, you know. So you can go find it, out there. And from what I know, I think it's a good product. But I talked to a guy who used to work at Gillette, and he was part of the launch team and the engineering and design team for that product. And he told me, he said, we had to go partner with an external company. There's this company, I think he didn't say who. I assume it's like Merkur, which is in Germany, that makes safety razors. He told me we had to go partner with those guys because we couldn't do it in-house. We no longer had the internal capabilities to make products like this. Like, we didn't know how to. So we basically had to go to these other guys and white label a product from these other guys that were making these products already. And like that, like, just blew my mind that it solidified how hard what I do is. And not just this isn't bragging about me, but like anybody who's been in the trenches and knows their product and knows, gas masks. We were talking about Mira safety. Like, that dude probably knows gas masks like nobody's business. And like, that is a competitive advantage that we have even above the behemoths like Gillette. Like, they decided we can't do this in-house. We have to go find somebody else to do this. So there is a big competitive advantage just in doing what you do well and executing.
I think that's another good story to talk about as well. It's a lot of our listeners are smaller brands, like sub-million to up to 8 figures. And, you have that fear that, what if, in our industry, what if Procter & Gamble, comes into our space? They're just going to destroy us. They have all the resources. But the reality is they don't. Like, they have design by committee. Yeah. They have, what are they called? MBA students who are just like telling you what the market wants and doesn't want. Yeah. And it's just like a slow lumbering process. And they're removed from the customers as well. Like, they're selling it in through the wholesale channel, and they're not getting that same feedback that we get as e-commerce owners. So, like, if someone enters your space and they're bigger and a lot more money, like, don't give up. Like, there's still tons of opportunity out there.
Yeah, it's hard to parse that, all the, tweets and, sound bites that get so much scale are always about marketing tips and hacks and these sort of things. And like, it's hard to really get any attention around the idea that what we're doing, like, takes time. Like, building a real sustainable, interesting business takes time and dedication and like just obsession. And you don't get that, in the first year or 2 years. Like, the reason Sean is probably really good at what he does is like, that's all he thinks about is wallets all the time. And, they've probably perfected the design. I don't know. I don't know a single thing about their design or anything, but like, that's all they think about constantly is like, how do I make and sell the best wallets ever? And that's all I think about constantly. How do I make and sell the best shaving products ever? Beard products. And so like, that's a huge strategic advantage that's not ever talked about in tweets, about marketing hacks, so I don't know.
Speaking of tweets, you tweeted recently a survey that Andrew Udarian did.
Yes.
Another former guest of the show who was doing like a status of the e-commerce. And one of the questions, tell me what that question was.
So he does a yearly, what's he call it? Like
State of
the e-commerce.
Yeah.
A fantastic survey. Just Google State of the e-commerce. Really good survey he does every year. And this year, it's probably like 20, 25 questions. And like question number 2 or 3 was literally, let me give you an exact quote. It was 2021 the worst year ever for you in e-commerce? It wasn't like, and it was just yes or no. Yeah. It was the way he phrased the question that like, just like took the air out of me. And like I said, it pierced my soul. It wasn't like, how was 2021? It was it the worst year ever for you? And like, he's leading the witness.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the assumption is it wasn't a good year for anybody. So
it wasn't the worst year. And yeah, like a lot of people had a really bad year.
Yeah.
For a lot of different reasons, supply chain and marketing and that kind of thing. But anyways, I checked yes very quickly because it was a pretty terrible year for me. It was not terrible, but it was a tough year for us.
Well, you know what's funny? Patrick's been on this podcast a couple of times. We used to do like a Friday. What was that old thing?
Beard versus shave, or
what was that?
Oh, Twitter Live or Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, Twitter Spaces, and before that, what was it? Clubhouse.
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 That's right.
Well. So
how quickly Clubhouse has died.
Oh my god,
we've already forgot what it's called.
So, anyways, we've chatted a lot, and I think in the last podcast when I brought James up, we had like a little bet going where we were kind of competing, and at the beginning of last
quarterly
year,
sales, we were competing on who would have better sales.
And at the beginning of last year, you're like, no, we're not going to do that this year. It was
I mean, what happened is, I basically, you were killing me every time we talked, and it was a friendly competition. It wasn't like we were
we're not rubbing.
Yeah, you weren't rubbing it into me, but like, it was hard for me. It wasn't hard. This is hard to describe. It wasn't hard. I'm always happy for your success. So I was never unhappy about it. It was hard for me to like constantly be confronted by, number one, I was always thinking about how tough of a year it was. And then, I have comparison, just like any other entrepreneur does. And I'm always comparing myself to other people. And so it was hard for me to like, see that. And I know it wasn't the best year for you either.
No. I mean, like all that top line bragging ended up to be for naught.
Yeah, because profit was a crunch for both of us. But anyways, so like it was basically, I knew it was like bad for me to like constantly, like we weren't comparing, we were having fun, but to me it turned into comparison, and I knew that was bad for me. And so I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like this whole share and sales thing. It started out fun, but then for me it turned.
Yeah.
And again, like that had nothing to do with you. That was just all like what was going on.
No. I mean, I feel those same things too. It's just like when I have bad days sales wise, like instead of doing what I should be doing is like getting to the bottom of the problem, I like quit checking my numbers and like kind of like plugging my ears and like la. Yeah. We'll see if it goes away until like maybe like my emotional state gets back into a position where I can tackle the problems I need to address. Or
that's really funny because my default is the exact opposite.
Really?
Yeah. I like to a fault and to like it's not healthy like or helpful, I like start going deep into the numbers. So I'm like refreshing everything. I'm checking like CPMs and CTRs and AOVs and like refreshing this dashboard and pulling up this thing, and like when I should just take a step back and be like, it's just one day, like zoom out. And so like I've gotten a lot better at that over time, zooming out, and I've got a great team now, and so I'm less in the weeds. And we rolled out EOS this year, Entrepreneurial Operating System, which I've tweeted about. And so that's helped me kind of be less like kind of white-knuckled on the steering wheel of the business. But yeah, that would be my kind of default state is over-analysis.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to hear like the differences. I think you really do run your business quite a bit different. Like you are clearly a lot more control. Like I'm a control guy too. Yeah. Like don't get me wrong, I love my control, but I think like for you and your wife to be able to build it to the size you were, where it's essentially just the two of you, just like blows my mind. Still blows my mind to this day. And then I feel like you're taking the hard road too. Like he's bringing on green employees and then investing a lot to train them up. How's that going for you?
It's going well, and to be clear, it's not. Give my employees all the credit. It's not been just Jennifer and I for a little while, but we built, what you're saying is we built a pretty impressive business, just the two of us. But now there's like 12 of us. And, this could turn into a long conversation, but I'll just kind of leave it at this. I made a decision kind of mid last year to build specifically my marketing function in-house. And, part of doing that, I hired a lot of kind of new green people that I thought I over-indexed on grit and determination and like just kind of hunger.
Yeah, chip on the shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not regretting that. I have a great team and it's going well. I mean, we certainly have our challenges. I'm growing as a leader. They're growing as employees, but I have a great team. And I mentioned EOS again. EOS has been transformational for our business because it helped me. Basically, in short, it's like a system and like a set of kind of processes and ways you kind of run it's like a OS, operating system, to run your business on it. And so it helped me organize my company better. It helped me give vision better to my company and set priorities. And, we do the quarterly rocks thing. And so that's been a huge help. So anyways, this kind of past 6 to 8 months, I've really been growing as a CEO and a leader and like pulling my hands out of the business in terms of details.
Yeah. Eamon was on the show as well. He had a good point where it's like 0 to kind of like 3 to 5 million.
Mm-hmm.
You just need like a badass entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And you can do everything. And like you are clearly that person. But, that 5 million and up to, 50 million, it becomes a people problem.
Yeah.
And like, how do you build the systems and the processes? EOS, we kind of go back and forth on Twitter about because while I say we run EOS, ours is a very like beard brand style EOS. Like I'm not a process guy.
Yeah.
My business partner is not a process guy, but we do take, elements of it and kind of fuse it in. Are you following that to the T? To walk me through like how you got introduced to EOS.
Yeah, good question.
And then like the pathway for implementing it, running it, and then like the adoption of the team and how that's been successful or challenging.
This is great. So this kind of ties in actually with like the hardest year ever. So one of the like things that EOS their kind of catchphrases is when you hit the ceiling, like that's when you're ready for EOS. Like basically when everything hits the fan, like turn to EOS. It's kind of like, they're like, come, join us, you're ready.
Well, not only that, they're like, you're going to pay the big bucks.
Yeah,
like if you implement it drama free, nobody's going to get hired. So
you are broken. So come, we will make you whole. So last year was a really tough year for me, and we can kind of touch back on that if you want, but like, marketing wise, we had a hard time with the iOS updates. Then, we got over that. And then supply chain, we had some real issues with COVID shutdowns, that kind of stuff. So just the business did fine. It didn't do great. It did fine. Just me personally, it was a hard year on me. And then we were also like working super overtime on these really complicated, complex new products we were launching that were just taking it out of me. Development on those took like 6 months longer than we expected. So anyways, like towards kind of Q4, like I was just burnt out, like every definition of the word, I was burnt out. And I know quite a few smart people, and every day, like that list grows longer, that use EOS. One in particular, JB Sauceda, he now works at Cart.com. He sold his 3PL to Cart.com. Another one, Chris Powers, really smart guy who's here in Fort Worth in real estate. And then like I would just meet these random people that run their restaurants on EOS, that run their real estate, that run e-commerce. And so like over time, I was like, okay, Patrick, if all these smart people are doing it, then you should do it. Like that was all I needed to know. When JB especially was like, it has changed. I think he said something like, it's changed my business. And so like I had this kind of two things going on. I knew I was like really burned out and having a hard time, and almost like, I wasn't like ready to walk away from the business, but it was kind of those thoughts of like,
it's not fun.
Yeah.
It's not fun working on it.
It was not enjoyable. There's a quote from some books, you may know it, that I've got on my wall. It says, if your business depends on you, you don't run a business, you have a job. And it's the worst job in the world because you're working for a lunatic. And I felt that deeply. Like I had a job and it was the worst job in the world. So anyways, I knew that, but then I also knew all these really smart people that were on EOS. And like, I'm very I'm kind of like you in a sense of like, I'm not going to follow these, I know better than like these silly,
book writers that are just getting rich selling.
Yeah, exactly.
Selling blueprints.
I know better. So I actually knew about EOS like a year before, and I was like, I'm not doing EOS. I know how to do this stuff. But then I was basically on my knees, and I was like, okay, this is the point of surrender, and I was like, I am buying this book, and I am doing every single thing in it. That's kind of what I decided. And so I bought the book in December. It's a book called Traction that kind of lays out how EOS works. And technically, you're supposed to hire like a person to help you implement it. It's simple, but it's also complicated. And so technically they want you to hire an expensive person to come implement. But I was like, I'm not paying that kind of money, so I'm just going to do it myself. So I read the whole book like twice through. And then Jennifer and I, you and I were talking about this earlier. We spent the last week of 2021 in Austin at my parents' lake house, just isolated, just the two of us in this beautiful place. Like, okay, we're going to take this book and we're going to apply everything to the business. And we did. So we spent that whole week like just working through it and applying it to the business. And it already has changed. It's changed the business and it's changed me. Like I enjoy going to work. Like this year has been hard as well, but nowhere near as hard as last year, just mentally. And I like going to work again.
Yeah. I think there's like hard, like I enjoy solving the problems and I've got things that I need to do and accomplish. And then there's hard, like this is not enjoyable.
Yeah.
I'm suffering and there's no end in sight. I feel like the hardest times are where you feel like there's no out.
Yeah.
And you're just like trapped. You've got these handcuffs to the business.
Yeah. And it's like, I love solving problems. Like that is, I've always said like being an entrepreneur is solving problems every day. Like they never end. But at some point, like sometimes those problems become so large and so numerous that like you start to kind of drown and you feel just like I'm never going to get out of this sea of problems that is, overwhelming me. And so like that's kind of when I go into the despair mode of like there are so many problems and I cannot solve all of them.
Yeah. I wanted to add on another book that is almost more workbook like is Scaling Up.
I think they're similar, right?
Yeah. I think it may even be by the same people. One is just like, I think Traction tells you about stories of how people use it, right?
No, Traction is like the blueprint of like how to use EOS.
Okay.
I think Scaling Up is a separate system, but I think they're similar.
Okay. Anyways, another resource for those out there.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back to that week in Austin.
Yeah.
What were kind of like the light bulbs went off moments of EOS that you're just like, this is so dumb. Like, why haven't I been doing this for 4 years?
I mean, honestly, it's kind of embarrassing to admit. It's all the basics. Like, we had never had an org chart before. Like, we had always like built, and this is just like relics of like how we bootstrapped our company. And like, I was never great at hiring in the early days. We're a lot better. We're good at it now. But in the early days, it was like kind of warm body in a seat, like just kind of go do things that I need done. So we never had an org chart before this year. We never had like a strategic vision for the company. So one of the things about EOS, they have you do like a 10-year vision, a 3-year vision, a 1-year vision, and then like quarterly objectives to get to that 1 year. So we just kind of did all those basics, the org chart, the strategy, the vision, like who are we, our mission statement. We've had kind of mission statements, but they've never been like a core of who we are. And like, it's always been something on a document buried in a Notion, board. And so we just really embraced all of these things, the org chart, the who are we. And like, I think probably the biggest thing that it did for us is just helped. There's a really specific reason they go from 10 years. You start at 10 years. Like, who do I want to be in 10 years? And then they bring you down to 3 years and then 1 year and then quarters. And so it helps you just be like, okay, who do we want to be in 10 years? But then how do we get there from here? Like, it helps you break down the long-term vision into chunks that are manageable into, okay, what are we actually going to do this quarter to get to that 10-year vision? And then you distribute those, objectives amongst the team. And that's basically all you talk about for that quarter. And so that structure has been really helpful for us because in the past, it's just been real scatterbrained of like, what does Patrick want us to do today?
Yeah.
And that's just not a good way to run a business.
Do you feel your team's really bought into it and they feel less stressed? And
yes, multiple of my employees have said, I think all of them appreciate it. Some of them significantly enjoy it. Like they've told me this is amazing. Like I love EOS. And especially like my remote employees, I think enjoy it a lot. Specifically, so I have my developer is in Africa and really fantastic part of my team. But like just him, I think he doesn't, he has really limited connections to the rest of the team just by nature of being remote. I mean, most of us are remote now. But anyways, it's given him, instead of like just sitting around every week, just like, I don't know what I should be doing. Maybe I'll kind of work on this project. Like he has very clear, this is what we're doing today. This is what we're doing this week. This is what we're doing this quarter. And to people who are ambitious and like to solve problems and accomplish things, like how amazing is it when your path is laid out in front of you and instead of running around in circle, you like know exactly what you're supposed to do. And then you get the satisfaction of actually accomplishing that thing that you set out to do. So anyways. I
think one of the lessons I learned as an entrepreneur when I was struggling with employees and team members was, like, first of all, wanting to blame them for the problem when ultimately it always is on you as the founder and the leader of the company.
Yeah.
But the other thing is like your team really want to do a good job.
Yeah.
They want to kick ass in their job.
Yeah.
They want to help you guys grow. They want to be successful. And the thing is, the problem they have is they can't read your mind.
Yeah.
They're really bad at it. And as the founder or the leader, it's really easy to forget that not 100% of your thoughts get spoken out to other people. So you know everything that's going on in your mind. And that's where your frustration is like, why don't you just do this or this or this?
Yeah.
Well, because you didn't communicate.
Yeah.
And like EOS is that communication blueprint. Really, it's like, here's what we're doing. Here's my mind.
Yep.
Just follow my mind. And it's, forcing you to put everything in your mind that's really important and prioritizing it down on paper.
Yeah. When I rolled it out, I told my team, this isn't intended to be, because it definitely adds a level of kind of bureaucracy, although like that's a really strong word. It's not, it's just like,
it's structure.
Structure. Yeah. That like I was always anti, like we don't, because I came from the corporate world and I very much like, when I started the company, I was like, I'm never doing a PowerPoint again, right? Because like that's all I did at court, is make PowerPoints constantly and like anyways. So I was like, we're not structured, nothing, but like your team needs structure and so like when I told them we were rolling this out, I was like, this isn't for me to like micromanage you or like be, oppressive. This is to supercharge your work. Like, so that you don't have to sit around wondering, what are we supposed to be doing? You're just going and doing it. Like, we don't waste time thinking, what should I be doing today? It's very clear what you should be doing today in this quarter. So like, it's meant to supercharge your work, not slow it down. So,
yeah. Where can people get a hold of you, learn more about EOS and buy some razors?
I should get an affiliate link. You can find me on Twitter at Sounds Like Canoe, because my last name sounds like canoe. I'm Patrick Coddou. Or you can go to my website, supply.co, and buy some shaving products.
There you go. Another great episode. If this is your first episode of listening to Patrick, go back and listen. I think we've done probably two other ones. They're always great conversations. Patrick is a brilliant mind within the e-commerce space. So I appreciate you opening up your home for these past couple of days. I appreciate you sharing your birthday.
Yes, sir.
With me. And hopefully our listeners enjoy this as much as I did.
Thank you, Eric.
This has been another e-commerce conversations. Cheers and keep on growing.